Bernie Dernheim coming to you today from the Soundsite Academy here at the Inner West Union of Anarcho-Syndicalist Witch Doctors. And of course, I am an artist, a rapper, a yogi, and an Anarcho-Syndicalist Witch Doctor. And we're here today in the VCE section of the Soundsite Academy, that is involving our participation in that fine institute, the Centre for VCE Communications. And today I want to share with you what I think is the best setup that utilizes this particular synthesizer, the Moog Werkstatt 01. Now, I say that it is the best setup for that synthesizer as a form of shameless clickbait, right? This is purely a clickbait title that I'm giving to this video. It's in saying that it is the best setup for the Moog Werkstatt. Of course, there are many possible ways to configure this synthesizer, and the one that I'm going to describe for you today is just one of many possible ways to configure this synthesizer. But it's one that I found to be particularly useful for a number of reasons. It's one that provides many possibilities. It enhances the possibilities of the Moog Werkstatt, and of course, this synthesizer is set up to provide all sorts of different opportunities to interface with other devices. And that's one of the things that I'm doing with this setup, is to create those different connections to a series of other devices that I'm going to articulate for you today. And you'll see, I don't know, maybe you'll be like, yeah, that is the best way of configuring the Moog Werkstatt 01. You might say that. If you have any commentary on the subject, you can, of course, activate the comment section below with such commentaries. And but you will see that what I'm describing here is quite a nice setup. Okay, so let's get into it. I'm going to jump over to the overhead camera, which is right there. It's just hovering out of shot here, and it's going to show you what's in front of me. So here we are. We have these pads. These pads are providing MIDI signals that are running into this box here. This is a Pro Solo Mark III, and it's a box that takes MIDI signals like the ones these pads create, takes those MIDI signals and converts them to control voltages, right? We're talking about control voltages, or the VCEs, the voltage controlling entities. Well, this gives us voltages out of MIDI, right? So if you have very sharp eyes, you might be able to read that says CV there. What is called CV on this box is actually controlling the note. It is the voltage that is controlling the note, and these voltages coming from the pads are going into the VCO and controlling the notes, the frequency of the notes. That is what is going out of here, and we've got that voltage going two places, and in order for it to go two places, it's going through this box here, which is a buffered multiplier of the signal, right? Buffered mults, they allow you to take a signal and send it multiple places, and in this case I've got it going into both of these synthesizers so that I'm sending them the same note values. I've got signals coming out of the Kenton Pro Solo Mark III into this device here. Now, this is a device that if I just tilt upwards, you can see inside the circuitry of this device. This is the device that I built with my collaborator Ben Denham. We spent some time perusing this circuit and acquiring the necessary components to build this particular device. It's a envelope generator, and you can build one too if you so wish. You can go to the Electric Druid website and you can buy that chip right there, that chip inside. You can see that white chip there. You can buy that chip and you can make your own envelope generator if you buy a whole bunch more components as well, and you know how to follow a circuit diagram. And then of course we have a gate. A gate is like the trigger for the envelope, and the gate is going into the envelope generator. That makes sense, right? Because that's where the envelope is coming from. And then out of the envelope generator, we're going again into the buffered malts. So this allows me to send that envelope signal to multiple destinations. And you'll see I'm using all of those malts that are provided here. I've got 1 voltage coming in. This is the input, and then I'm using 4 copies of that voltage going to different places over here. The reason I'm using 4 copies is that one of those copies is going to the VCA, the voltage controlled amplifier on each of the synthesizers. And that is what you're hearing is really that VCA being controlled by the pads. So that's what you're hearing there. That's the VCA going into the VCA. But I'm also sending a copy of the envelope signal to the gate in on both of these. And now what that does is that it triggers the internal envelope of the Moog Werkstatt. And once I've triggered the internal envelope of the Moog Werkstatt, I can use the VC. I can use the mod capabilities, the modulation capabilities of the Moog Werkstatt, both on the VCF and the VCO. I can use this envelope to control the filter and the oscillator with its own unique envelope. Okay, because it's been triggered by this envelope, but all it's doing is acting as a trigger, and then I can use this attack and decay and sustain in order to dial in an envelope. So if I want to so you'll hear in a moment, like if I crank up the decay here, there it is. We hear that note ringing out for longer from this particular synth, and we'll bring it back to more or less where it was, right there. Same over here, crank up the decay. It's more subtle on this side, but you can still hear that note ringing out. But I want to bring it back to where it was. The Pro Solo is providing us with further modulation in that it's running in. We've got some velocity values, so you might have noticed that I've got velocity sensitivity, so I can go from this ringing type sound to a more distorted sound as I play harder. Now the reason we're getting that velocity sensitivity is because I'm taking a velocity signal out of the aux2 from the Pro Solo, running that into this envelope generator, and this envelope generator has a level in which allows me to modulate the level of the envelope with, in this case, velocity signals coming from the pads. Here, if I just play the keyboard, right? on one of these Moog Werkstats, you don't get any velocity control. These are just switches, right? Whereas here, I'm able to use the velocity control that is provided by this controller. This is the Machine Mark III controller. I'm able to use the pads on this and the velocity sensitivity to control this. So that's another aspect. Okay, this is why I say potentially this is the best configuration of the Moog Werkstatt 01 synthesizer, is because because we have that velocity control. And of course you could plug in a MIDI keyboard. That would be the most typical thing to do, to run a MIDI keyboard into this and to play the keys. I am not very good on the keyboard. I'm not a very good keyboard player. I much prefer to use pads in the same way that I use pads within the Machine Native Instruments realm, and that's what I'm doing here. I'm using them in much the same way. I do have a copy of Machine running on the computer that I'm working with here. That allows me to select a scale and to tune some velocity parameters, the velocity curve response of these pads, right? That's what that's doing. I'm not a doorless purist, I think is the right way to describe that. I don't mind having that machine turned on as I'm working with these machines here. So we've got velocity coming out of here. So yeah, this is one of the reasons why, right? We overcome the somewhat limited keyboard on the Moog Werkstatts, we can play across up to 4 octaves on the pads, depending on the scale. Like if we go for a pentatonic scale, then we've got 4 octaves. Let's flip it to a pentatonic scale so you can see the scale functionality. So we'll go for what is called by the machine people, where they call it a Japanese scale. I don't know if that is a little bit of Orientalism on behalf of the machine people, or in Japan, maybe there is a scale that they also call the Japanese scale. Maybe you can let me know in the comments if you know the answer to that. I suspect it's a little bit of Orientalism in suggesting that there is one scale that might represent the Japanese people. But here it is. Here's a pentatonic scale. So you'll see 4 octaves. We've got the 4 octaves. That diagonal is showing you the octaves, right? 4 octaves right there. So yeah, we can change scales and we can play, in this case, 4 octaves. So yeah, we're like overcoming the 1 octave limitation of this keyboard. That's one of the reasons, one of the reasons why this is potentially the best configuration for your Moog Werkstatt synthesizer. Another reason is that, like I said, this has some cool functionality built into it. One of them is an LFO, right? This, your Moog Werkstatt has an LFO, so here I've got 2 LFOs that are contributing, that potentially can contribute to the voice that we're creating, and maybe we'll bring the LFOs in. So let's see, at the moment, those LFOs are giving us, doing some pulse width modulation. So yeah, you can hear. So that's the LFOs. Look, I think we'll leave them off for the moment. So we'll just go back to the envelope generator doing that mod. So yeah, you've got LFOs in your Werkstatt. This LFO is a little bit different though. This LFO I am currently applying to the CV signal, which is slightly altering the pitch of each note as you play it, and it's doing a kind of vibrato effect on that. So you can hear it there, right? Now you'll also notice when I play softly, you're not hearing that vibrato effect. And that's because I am using the velocity to also control the LFO. What differentiates it a little bit from the LFOs that are running in the Moog Werkstats is that it is the wave is re-triggered every time you play a note. The waveform of the LFO is re-triggered every time you play a note. So instead of these guys, which are just kind of free running, this has been re-triggered by the notes. Which basically means that pulsing cycle is always going to start at the same point, given any note that I play. Every time I play a note, it will restart that pulsing cycle. Potentially, this is the best configuration of the Moog Werkstatt 01 synthesizer. Maybe you've got a better one. Put it in the comments. Bernie Dernheim from the Inner West Union of Anarcho-Syndicalist Witch Doctors, signing off here again from the Soundside Academy and the Centre for VCE Communications. Do check out our other content over on the Bernie Dernheim channel. And please, if you're into this sort of thing, subscribe and hit the notification and etc. And we will be bringing you more synthesizer content. So if you're into hearing this particular aspect of what we're doing here at the Soundside Academy, then yeah, please tune in for this. Do check out our other content. We have other content that is more related to aspects of politics and witch doctoring and various other things. That's the full gamut of activities of the Soundside Academy. So please join us in our future endeavors. But in the meantime, I'm going to take you out with a little bit more of a jam on this patch, and we'll see you next time.